Commission to order. We will begin with our invocation. Administrator, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Please join us in an attitude of prayer. God in heaven, we in this chamber give thanks to you for the blessings of this county and for the skill and dedication of those laboring for the common good. We ask that you guide and direct our meeting so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work and our goals this day. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Here. Commissioner Carpenter.
Here. That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval of this evening's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Motion's been made for the approval of our agenda as printed. Is there any discussion, any changes or alterations?
No discussion.
Very well. Seeing none, you'll recognize to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
That brings us to meeting schedule. Administrator?
Yes, the next commission meeting will be a work session Wednesday, October the 5th at 3 p.m. here in the chambers.
Thank you. There are no honorary resolutions. There are no discussion items. That brings us to public hearings. We have one item under public hearings. That is the 2002 tax levies. The way we will proceed on this is the administrator has a short presentation, and then I will open the public hearings, and we will take them in two parts. The first part being the county levies, and the second part being the outside agency levies. And with that, Administrator, please proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to give a brief overview, a little bit of the assessed valuation for Clay County and the mill levy, and a little bit of historical information. So in this particular chart, you will actually see for the last 10 years the assessed growth for Clay County since 2012. We know that sometimes in the odd even years, we see a little bit of a larger jump because that is due to reassessments. But it's interesting to note that over the 10 years, the average during that 10-year period has been about 5.33% growth in assessed valuation for the county for the past 10 years. Now, we've seen a larger increase in assessed valuation probably beginning in 2015, 2018. Coming out of that 2008, the recession, we started seeing a larger jump in our growth and also in property values. That is a key component, and so this particular chart kind of puts some context in for everyone in the room with regard to what is the current year in 2022 by category of assessed valuation, and then what is our new assessed valuation for 2022. So you can see in real estate, we've gone from about $4.5 billion to $4.6 billion. In real estate value, that's about a 2.1% growth. We have about $98 million in new construction across the county. In personal property, actually saw the largest growth in assessed valuation. Went from $964 million to $1.1 billion. That's about a 22% growth in personal property. Our railroad and utilities went from a little over $202 million to $220 million. Again, that's about an 8.78% growth. So our total current valuation in the county is a little over $6 billion, a growth from 5.6, so that's about a 5.79% growth. Now, and as we do our calculations, we also take into consideration those properties that are in tax increment financing districts. And so we do an adjustment. And you can see in 2022, that adjustment is $259 million. That's actually down from last year of $276 million, about a 6% decrease. And what that's telling us is that projects across the county that are in TIFs are actually coming to conclusion, and those properties are coming back on the tax rolls at 100% of their valuation. So when we look at our adjusted valuation, you'll see that we saw a 6.4% growth for 2022 compared to 2021. Now, assessed valuation comes into play as we look and calculate the mill levy. Many things come into play on the state forms that we fill out, including the Hancock rule. And so this particular chart breaks down the various mill levies and again does a comparison from our current 2021 mill levy to the ceiling rate that is currently available for the 22 and the difference there. So we'll start with the general fund for the county. Our current 21 mill levy is 0.038 mills, and our new ceiling rate is 0.0284. So that is adjusted downward and actually is a reduction in the mill levy of 0.0054. That's a 16% rate increase, or rate reduction. And so this year, in 2021, our general fund property tax, real estate, and personal property generated about $1.8 million in the general fund. With the estimated ceiling rate and our assessed valuation, that for next year is $1.6 million. So that's a change from the current year of a little less than $200,000 less in revenue, or about 11% reduction in revenue for the general fund. So when we put that in context for our residents for real estate, the average market value of a home in Clay County is about $295,000. And so when you do a comparison between the 21 mill levy and the ceiling mill levy, that's a savings to the average home of $3.03 on their tax bill. Now, our road and bridge also has a mill levy. That mill rate, let me back up. So in the general fund, not only do we adjust and calculate based on Hancock, we also have the obligation of sales tax and the rollback on our property tax based on growth on sales tax. So that's one of the reasons that the rollback for the general fund ceiling rate is basically reduced by 16%. When we go to the road and bridge, that mill levy, you'll see that its rate in 21 is 0.0697. And the ceiling rate for the road and bridge is flat. It remains the same. Hancock does apply, but we do not apply the sales tax growth to the road and bridge. So for our revenues, for our road and bridge in 21 is about $3.7 million. Because it's flat, but because we saw an increase in our assessed valuation, the estimated revenues for next year is a little over $4 million. So that is an increase in revenue for the road and bridge of about $242,000, a 6% increase. Also on the chart, you will see our outside agencies, and as Presiding Commissioner Nolte indicated, there will be 2 action items by the Commission later in the meeting. One is to set the mill levy for the general fund and the road and bridge for the county, but also to set the mill levy for the outside agencies. So for mental health, the current mill rate is 0.0857. Again, it remains flat. Because of growth, that does generate additional revenue for mental health and slightly less than $300,000. For our development disabilities, the current mill rate is 0.1028. Again, it remains flat, but that does generate additional revenue in the amount of about $356,000. And then for our senior services, the mill levy currently is 0.0427. It also will remain flat, but that also generates $147,945 of additional revenue for senior services, utilizing the current ceiling rate that is proposed for 2022. And that is the overview I have on the mill levies.
Administrator, you had used the term Hancock a couple of times. Would you go ahead and, for those who may be here and not familiar with that, could you give us a quick definition of what that refers to?
Absolutely. So Hancock is a sort of actually was the author of the state legislation that was enacted. And in essence, it is how we utilize information and calculate the ceiling rate of the mill levy. And so it takes into consideration sort sort of trying to remain revenue neutral as property values go up, but also allows for some CPI index for additional growth in the revenue, but is trying to also protect the taxpayer as those property values continue to escalate. And we've seen that in many places in Missouri and across the country of where property values have skyrocketed. We've seen that just recently in the price of homes. And so Hancock is put in to help protect the property owner, but also help protect the taxing jurisdiction so that their revenues remain stable.
Thank you. With that, we will, I will in a moment gavel us into our public hearing. Public hearing is required that we do this as we set our levies so that the public has the opportunity to comment prior to us taking action on those levies. So as I outlined before, I will gavel us in, and then we will first hear comments on the general county and the county road and bridge levies, and then we will move on to the outside agencies. And then once everyone has had their ability to weigh in on that, then we will close those public hearings. So with that, I'd like to open this public hearing on the subject of the Clay County 2022 tax levies. We will begin with the county levies, the county general and the county road and bridge levies as proposed. Just for the information of those who would like to comment, it is my intention to offer an amendment when we discuss it later on, taking the general county levy from 0284 to 0250. I will make a presentation on it at that time, but I wanted to let the public know that that was what I would be proposing. With that, is there anyone who would like to comment on the county levies? Is there anyone present who would like to address the county levies? If there is no one who would like to weigh in on this subject, then we will move on to the next set of the tax levies, and that would be outside taxing levies. That would be for mental health, the Disabilities Board, DDRB, and for senior services. Is there anyone who would care to comment on those outside entity levies? Is there anyone who would care to comment on those levies? If there is no one who would care to comment on those levies, then we will consider that concluded. I will ask one more time, is there anyone who would like to comment on on the levies that we are setting? With that, that concludes the public hearing portion of this transaction. Thank you very much. That moves us on to our consent agenda. Administrator? Well, there's really nothing to read on that, is there? We have our consent agenda as printed. Is there a motion related to our consent agenda?
Commissioner, I move that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
Motion has been made for the approval of the consent agenda as printed. Discussion? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, you'll recognize to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to our regular agenda. First on the regular agenda is 2022-314. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-314, as consideration of a final plat for the Eastern Estates subdivision. Planning and Zoning Manager Jones will present information for the commission.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So Shane's going to get it pulled up here on the screen. This is the final plat for Eastern Estates. This was heard by the County Commission as a rezoning and preliminary in April of this year, and it was approved by the County Commission. You can see he's going to go to the next slide. And it's outlined in yellow. It is approximately 33 acres. It's lots 8 and 9 of Burton Estates, and it's located off of Northeastern Avenue. The proposal hasn't changed from the preliminary plat. It still includes 19 lots. Those lots range in size from 0.92 to 1.22 acres. There is a large 11-acre lot The proposal is to still hook this subdivision up to the private sewer system that is part of the Johnson Ridge subdivision to the north, and there is a landscape easement and stormwater detention included along with the two cul-de-sacs, which will be new county infrastructure that you can see located on the plat. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we received a letter from an adjacent property owner that requested that the county commission add a condition to this plan addressing the landscape buffer. As I stated, the developer did submit a landscape plan, and it is currently as a condition that they install that landscape plan and maintain it for 2 years. The adjacent property owner to the west wanted larger trees and additional landscape buffering planted. The Planning and Zoning Commission decided not to add that condition. The biggest update between the preliminary and final plat for this project is that the construction plans were approved by the county on-call engineer, so all that was verified to be good. And the Planning and Zoning Commission did vote 6-0 to approve this final plat with 16 conditions, and the applicant has stated that they agree with those conditions. The conditions are very similar to the preliminary plat. Staff did add a condition detailing or dealing with that landscape plan, requiring that during the 2-year maintenance period for the developer, if any of that landscaping died, the developer would need to replace that within 90 days. So that was the biggest change to the conditions. As I stated, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 to approve. I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and the applicant is present as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Jones?
No, thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Very good. Is there anyone else? Is the applicant present, and would they care to comment?
Good evening. My name is Melissa Van Krum with Rouse Fretz White Goss Law Firm, 4510 Bellevue Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri, 64111. I'm here today representing the applicant, Gherkin Properties LLC, which is owned by Mr. Gherkin, who lives on the subject property. Also with us today is Art Aiken of AGC Engineers. I will make it brief, as I know you have a busy agenda here, but we do request your approval of the final plat for Eastern Estates. As staff has confirmed, the final plat is strictly in conformance with the preliminary plan, and as with the preliminary plat, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development code. We greatly appreciate the time of staff and other county and utility experts in review of the final plan. We agree with the recommended conditions of approval, and we ask for your approval. And we're available here to answer any questions that you may have this evening. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the representative of the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
No questions.
Is there anyone else wishing to be heard on this issue? Very well. Is there a motion, and I would, because it's mainly because I need to be reminded as much as anyone, if there's a motion on 2022-314, please indicate which box to be checked on the resolution when making the motion. With that, is there a motion related to 2022-314?
I'll make a motion for 2022-314 with the box approved.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2022-314 with the box approved being checked. Discussion?
No discussion.
Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close?
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-316. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-316 is consideration of a final plat for the Eagle View subdivision. Planning and Zoning Manager Kip Jones is here to provide information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is the final plat for Eagle View. Got it pulled up on the screen. It's outlined in yellow. This is another case that has come before the County Commission. The rezoning and preliminary plat were approved in May of this year. Here is the proposed subdivision. It has not changed since the preliminary plat. It's a total of 8 lots. There is a small extension of a cul-de-sac to access 4 of the lots, and then the other 4 lots are accessed off existing roads in the area. The lots range in size from 5 to 10 acres. There is a preservation easement included in this proposal. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we did not receive any comments from the public. As with the previous case, this case was reviewed by the county engineer and approved. And if you'll remember from the preliminary plat, the developer worked with the property owner to the west to add a berm or swale to mitigate some stormwater concerns, and both parties agreed to that, and that is one of the conditions that's listed for this case. The Planning and Zoning Commission did vote 6-0 to approve with 16 conditions. Again, those conditions are very similar to the rezoning and preliminary plat conditions, and the applicant has agreed with those conditions. I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and the applicant is present.
Are there any questions to Mr. Jones?
No questions.
No questions.
If the applicant would like to comment, please come forward. Very well, the applicant has no comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2022-316?
Commissioner, I move that we approve 2022-316.
With the box approved?
Approved, yes.
Very good. Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-316 with the box indicating approved, checked. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-317 and 2022-318, which are companion issues. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-317 and Resolution 2022-318 are companion resolutions for the rezoning and preliminary plat of Willow Ranch subdivision. Planner Species is here to provide information for the commission.
Please proceed.
Shane Spees, Clay County Planner. This is a rezoning and preliminary plat for the proposed subdivision of Willow Ranch. The subject property is currently unplatted. It's zoned agricultural and has an existing single-family home on the property. The proposal is for a total of 4 lots. 3 of the lots will be rezoned since it does not meet our 20-acre minimum. Lot 3 will remain zoned the same. The lot sizes range between 5 and 26 acres. There will be a cul-de-sac installed to access the proposed lots. Each lot that is under 20 acres is required to have an agricultural land preservation, and that applicant has provided that. For our planning and zoning meeting, we did receive concerns from adjacent property owners regarding stormwater. The developer has agreed to meet with the adjacent property owners to discuss mitigation efforts. Planning and zoning staff will work with the developer and adjacent property owners to address these concerns as well. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved this case with a 6-0 vote with 12 conditions, and the applicant has agreed to these conditions. I'd be happy to answer any of the questions commissioners may have, and the applicant is also present.
Are there any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
If the applicant is available, don't comment? Very well. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on these issues? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2022-317 and 318?
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-317 and 318 with the box marked approved.
Very good. Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-317 and 318 with the box approved, checked. Any further discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-323.
Resolution 2022-323 is approval of ARPA funding for electronic signature software with Blue Link in an amount not to exceed $10,000. This was presented by staff last week, and we're available for questions if the commission has any.
Are there any questions from the commission for staff?
No questions.
No questions, thanks.
Very good. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on this issue? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2022-323?
Commissioner, I move that we approve 2022-323.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2022-323. No further comments, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-326. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-326 is approving ARPA funding for an accounting system conversion with Tyler Technologies in an amount not to exceed $450,000. Staff did present on this last week, and we're available for questions by the commission.
Are there any questions from any commissioners?
Questions?
Seeing none, is there anyone from the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2022-326?
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-326.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2022-326. Discussion?
No discussion.
Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-319. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-319 is consideration of approving a lease agreement for the purchase of 4 Mack tandem dump trucks for the Highway Department. This was presented by staff last week, and we're available if you have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, excuse me, commissioners have any questions on 2022-319 of staff?
No questions.
No question.
Anybody for the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, is there a motion for 2022-319?
I move that we approve 2022-319.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2022-319. Discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-327. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-327 is approving an agreement for professional engineering services at the airport with Burns & McDonnell. This was presented last week to the commissioners, and staff is available for any additional questions.
Are there any questions from the commission? Seeing none, is there a motion related to 2022-327?
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-327.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2022-327. Discussion?
No discussion.
No comments from the public. Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-313. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-313 is the appointment of Marcy Stafford to the Development Disability Resources Board for a term that is set to expire on January 31st, 2025.
Thank you. This was one of my nominations. Marcy was recommended by members of the existing commission very highly, so I think she would be a very good fit. I believe, are you here today? I don't know her personally, so I don't know exactly what, I only know her from her resume. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them from the commission.
None for me.
No questions, thank you.
Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and make the motion for the approval of 2022-313, and on it is indicated the name Marcy L. Stafford. Further discussion? Seeing none, I am recognized to close. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
All right. I guess that's what happens when I have coffee with the meeting instead of water. We get through it. That brings us to the to 2022 Ordinance 27. Administrator?
2022 Ordinance 27 is setting the tax levies for 2022 for the county's general fund in the amount of 0.0284, and for the county road and bridge for 0.0697.
Thank you very much. And this is an auditor's issue, so please proceed.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. So what's before you with 2022 Ordinance 27 is to give direction for us to fill out the pro forma from the State Auditor's Office, specifically line J of the tax rate to be levied. As the administrator indicated and as was discussed, the ceiling per these calculations for the general fund levy is 0.0284. That's reflective of the sales tax rollback because there is no required Hancock rollback in this year as a non-reassessment year, an even year on the real estate component, and that half sales tax rollback on our half-cent sales tax on our general levy amounts to essentially 20 cents, 0.02011, and that's how we get to the ceiling. And then the general, besides the general, we have the county road and bridge levy, and there is no requirement to change that ceiling at all from its current rate of 0.697. And we do not have a park levy, but it is still included in the information. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of the auditor?
No questions.
No questions.
Very good. As I indicated earlier, I would like to propose an amendment, so I would like to make a motion that the general county levy be moved from 0.0284 to 0.0250. That would make a difference of roughly $194,709. I had hoped to be able to move that down a little bit more, but I don't know that that is practical. As a point of historical point would be that when this county adopted some years ago the sales tax, it was represented to the voters that would be that we would eliminate our county general tax, property tax. And for a certain period of time, that was indeed the case. It did end up coming back. And so part of my feeling is that this was a promise we made to taxpayers if they would give us the ability to put a sales tax in place, that this would be zeroed out. I am obviously not proposing that right now. My understanding is that, at least as far as the current budget is being fashioned, that would in fact not require the budget team to be adjusting anything, that it would be doable under those circumstances. So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion. Do either commissioners have any questions that they would like to pose or comments they would like to make?
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. So I do appreciate that this is a fairly small reduction. I know you had considered some larger ones. You talked about that last week. My view on it is basically, we're facing a lot of cost pressures here as a county, just like every employer is. The cost of paying employees is going up, and there are a lot of struggles that we already have to adequately pay our several hundred county employees. And $200,000 can go a long way to help make sure that they get adequate pay. And my view would be that would be a better way to utilize those funds. Obviously, we're a county of over 250,000 people. So this is a tax reduction that would be roughly 75 cents per resident in Clay County, maybe about $2 per home per year. And so it's not a tax cut that's going to be especially meaningful, I think, to the residents of the county to get an average of 75 cents a year reduction per resident. But I do think the $200,000 could negatively impact our ability to make sure that we're able to pay our hardworking employees what they deserve. And with all of the cost pressures that are happening, I think that for me is a higher priority than what is a tax reduction that I'm not sure will really do much to benefit the taxpayers. And so for that reason, it's not that, it's some terrible idea. I just, when I weigh the benefit of that small of a tax reduction versus the way we could utilize those funds and with the current cost pressures that we have, in my view, the more fiscally responsible choice would be to leave the mill levy where it's at and not implement this reduction. And so for that reason, I'm going to oppose the amendment. but appreciate the discussion.
No, and the thing is, I really appreciate the idea that we can discuss this thing and have disagreements without any rancor. This is one of the reasons that brought me to this was this body had previously placed on the ballot another tax reduction that would be for a commercial, and I was wanting to try to also balance that out so there was, although it is modest, but something that would be for citizens to be able to get, some modicum of relief. And in my mind, we're looking at kind of a general push towards relieving the tax burden on our citizens. So that's kind of where my mindset is. This combined with the possible proposal that we approved, and then of course the library districts just lowered their levy. So it's more of a cumulative kind of a thing. So you're right, it is a modest tax cut, but the idea was that it be part of a general thrust. But I do respect, your thoughts and your opinions, and I'll come back to you before we close. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. No, I don't actually have any questions or comments on this, but thank you for all the work on this.
Very good. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment? Very well, seeing none. Let's see, I've already made the motion. The motion is on the table. I'll just go back around one more time. Commissioner Carpenter, if you'd like to have any comments before I close, please proceed.
Thank you. I don't really. I appreciate, like I said, the discussion. I don't think that this is, an especially big change in either direction. I just, to me, I would rather, as I said, put the $200,000 toward employee raises. Wage pressures are very real right now, and with 8% inflation, that's a. We're going to need to do that for our hardworking employees, and so I'd rather put the $200,000 there rather than, like I said, roughly the 75 cents or so per resident. And so I'll vote no, but I appreciate the discussion, and that's all I got. Thanks.
Okay. One more opportunity. Commissioner Thompson, do you have any comments at this time before I close?
I don't. Thank you.
Very well. I will just close by saying that I think this is something that is certainly, as I said, a modest tax cut. I think it's a way of going closer towards keeping a promise we made to the people. And as I said, my understanding is the budget team has already kind of baked this particular figure into into their projections so that it would not require any adjustments at this point with what has been put forward, or at least is in the works as far as our budget goes. So with that, I will close. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
No.
Commissioner Nolte,
Yes. That brings, so therefore we have now, we'll go back to the underlying issue. That would be 2022 Ordinance 27 as amended. That will be the new title. As we go forward on that, I will open the discussion for any further discussion on the general levy ordinance itself. Commissioner Thompson?
No comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No discussion. Thanks.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this issue? Seeing none, I don't think we had who had the motion on that? On the original, was it me?
It was.
Sorry about that. I'm so used to everyone else having the motions. Make a motion for the approval of 2022 Ordinance 27 as amended. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Yes.
and Commissioner Nolte. I didn't know about voting on that one.
That's okay. Very well. That brings us to 2022 Ordinance 28. Administrator?
2022 Ordinance 28 is setting the outside agencies tax levies for 2022. The mental health levy would be 0.0857. The DDRB levy would be 0.1028, and the senior services would be 0.0427.
Mr. Auditor?
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. Only thing I'll add is we did receive the signed document from each of these bodies indicating that there is no change to the current rate based on the calculations for this year. And I believe we do have a representative here from DDRB as well, just for if the commission is aware of if she wants to make any comment.
Are there any questions from the commission for the auditor before we go forward?
No questions.
Seeing none? Yes, please, are any representatives from the, any of the affected boards, if you'd like to come forward and comment? Okay, there are no comments. Is there anyone else from the general public who would wish to comment? Seeing none. Excuse me, is there a motion on 2022 ordinance 28?
Commissioner, I move that we approve 2022 ordinance 28.
Motion been made for the approval of 2022 ordinance 28. Discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-324. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-324 is approving the employee benefit plans for 2023 with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Delta Dental and setting the premiums. Staff did present on this last week, and if you have any additional questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Do any commissioners have questions on 2022-324?
No questions.
No questions.
Very good. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment on 2022-324? Seeing none. Is there a motion, I should say? I'm sorry, I didn't get a motion on 2022-324.
I'll make a motion to approve 2022-324.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, please, are you recognized to close?
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
That brings us to 2022-325. Administrator?
Resolution 2022-325 is approving an agreement for the flexible spending account administration with TriStar. Staff did present information on this last week. As the county councilor had asked, there were a few things we were still working out with the contract. Those items have been worked out to our satisfaction, and so we are recommending approval, but we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Counselor, could you go ahead and just kind of give us a quick version of those issues that
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked them all out, but there were a couple little things I didn't really like. It was a 3-year agreement with just evergreen 1-year renewals. There was no finite end to the agreement. We replaced that with a 3-year agreement with 3 1-year renewals for a total of 6, and inserted language that it can be terminated upon 30 days notice by either party. So essentially, we have a lot of flexibility in it. And then the other main thing that I was concerned about was to make sure that under the Sunshine Law that they understood that it applies to us and applies to them, that because they wanted to make certain parts confidential, and to the extent that they might fall under the Missouri law on trade secrets, it would be appropriate, but to the extent that they don't, then it would not be appropriate. So essentially, wanted to point out in the agreement that the Sunshine Law does apply. The company was very easy to work with, understood the points. I received the final version, I think, yesterday afternoon, signed, and it's ready for your consideration.
Very good. Are there any questions of the counselor?
No questions.
Very good. Are there any comments from anyone else? Anyone from the public? Is there a motion on 2022-325?
Commissioner, I move that we approve 2022-325.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2022-325. Discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of our regular agenda. Next is comments on non-agenda items. I'm always tempted when we have a 3-page agenda to wonder what possible comment on what items were not covered by this evening's agenda. But that said, is there anyone from the public, an office holder, or an agency wishing to comment on any issues not covered under tonight's agenda? Seeing none. County Administrator, do you have any comments you'd like to make at this time?
I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner comments? Commissioner Thompson?
I have no comments this evening either. Thank you.
No comments, thanks.
Okay. But the only thing I want to say is that we are under construction behind the scenes, and I want to commend our staff, administrator, deputy administrator, and others who are putting that together. They are certainly utilizing, making the best utilization of the space that we have available to be able to function under our new configuration of 7 commissioners. So certainly hats off to the staff and everyone involved. Brings us to approval of minutes of previous sessions. There are none listed. We have 2 written reports, and they are in our packets. One being the basic financial statement with independent auditor's report for the year ending December 31, 2021. Mr. Auditor?
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. I just want to, Commissioners, briefly give you an overview of our recently released audit for 2021 and financial statements at a very high level. You should have received the electronic version via the clerk, and then I have the bound copies for you as well. Essentially, the bottom line is for our second year in a row, we have no findings on our financial statements or our single audit, which is the audit that is required for our federal grants. The major ones we had in 2021, and of course, include the rescue plan and the rental programs, along with our usual grants. So that's I just want to say thanks to my team as well on their hard work for that. As I told you last year, it had been roughly over a decade where we did have some minor findings on our statements. We've always had an unmodified opinion, though. And what that means, again, is essentially that our financial statements on our books are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. But just an overview, if you look to the management's discussion and analysis, basically kind of an interpretation of the change in 2021 to the county's financial position, it's already in there, but basically we had essentially a $11 million increase from the end of 2020 to the end of 2021. And really what that represents, rather than getting into the very deep weeds, I'll basically just say that, yes, our net position is essentially $100 million, close to the size of our entire budget. However, a good 3/4 of that is tied up in capital assets. It's not easily liquidated, right? And essentially the explanation for that change is you had a number of things, as we recall, that happened in 2021. We had refunding, thanks to the Commission's approval of the old 2018 certificates of participation. That reduced our long-term debt and obligations in that sense. But at the same time, our current assets on hand, the cash for those bonds, were also given back to make that deal happen. And so that, from a financial reporting perspective, in the year of 2021, didn't have much net of a difference. In the long term, it's obviously a win as far as reducing long-term debt and our annual debt service payment. And in addition, we added a little bit of new bonds for bridge projects, important work on that. But most of the explanation then for the reason of the net increase is strong revenues in 2021. It was essentially sales tax revenues were much higher. We did have some other grants, but it's important to keep in mind in perspective of how grants are reported for financial reporting purposes. It's essentially what you spend in the year. And the interpretation there is that it's essentially not really your money until you've done it in an eligible way. So I guess I just want to bring that caveat to your attention that you're not going to see $24 million on our books essentially at the end of 2021. It's what we spent in 2021. So that's important to note of why you don't see a $24 million increase for 2021 because of the rescue plan on hand. So I just wanted to really bring that to your attention, but overall, a net improvement to the county's position. So you have 3 documents in front of you, the financial statements at 99 pages. You have the single audit report, which is on the federal grants themselves. And then finally, I did want to bring to your attention, this is not technically part of any findings to the statements, but there are communications to you as the commissioners, as the governing board, and I did want to present that to you. They are within the financial statements. They're just really expounded upon in the required communications. So they're mentioned in brief in the statements, but in more detail in the required communications. So I'd encourage you to review those. I think, overall my assessment is that it is an improvement from the prior year. I'd turn your attention to the last page of those communications where we had an issue in 2020. We did the audit in 21 for the year 2020. where we had a number of funds, 4 to be exact, that actually had expenditures over budget. And the reason that really happened is because a lot of those are what I'll call statutorily discretionary funds. And so if there's cash in the account, they can spend it by law. And so the auditors recommended that, we improve that and we, as good stewards, budget that appropriately. So we did that and sought to do that in 2021. And we made market improvement on all those funds. However, we did have one fund that went over budget in 2021, and that was the Emergency Fugitive Apprehension Fund. And I'll just say that the reason for that really is this is a unique fund. It's got a separate bank account, and it was set up decades ago. And the reason for it is, look, we want our deputies to have quick access to be able to go apprehend fugitives. And so they have cards that are charged that account, but it's difficult because it's not part of our accounts payable setup to basically, track and reconcile and budget for it accordingly. And so I think that's going to be improved in the upcoming budget, and we'll make sure we have enough budget in 2022 and enough in 2023. Some ways to avoid that situation also could be over budgeting, like I said, or, you could merge the bank accounts and just issue P cards instead as an idea. And we'll work with the sheriff's office on that. They've already made improvements on that fund itself. But, I actually did bring a budget adjustment to you on December 22nd of last year for that fund. And we looked at the extra revenue that had been reimbursed above the budget. It was $20,000, and it still wasn't enough. So we'll just keep an eye on that so that we can truly have, even in the required communications, no recommendations would be the ideal goal. The only other thing I'll leave you with is we do still have a struggle with the what from a financial reporting perspective is seen as a fund balance deficit in the Road and Bridge Fund. There's still cash there, and it functions on an operating basis, but they notice an issue from the fund balance perspective. I will say again, there too, we also made improvements. In 2020, that account ended at a negative, on a financial reporting perspective, negative $1.9 million. At the end of 2021, it was negative $774,160,000. And the reason I assess for that is in 2020, a lot of grant revenue had been budgeted but did not come in, but the expenditure side was spent, rightfully so. And so that put the cash position at a very low level. And then as I've mentioned to you before, like in the audit earlier in this year, you have that obligation of the road district agreements. Not only the property tax portion at 14 cents, most of that happens at the beginning of the year. It's at the end of the year when we see a $900,000 sales tax payment as part of those agreements as well. And so that really presents financial reporting challenges to that fund. But I'll leave you on an optimistic note here. I will say, I think working with a new administrator and the budget team, I think we are working to really improve that fund's financial position and looking at creative ways to help finance our highway needs with our existing resources. So we will continue to work on that to make sure that is also not a recommendation in the required communications. So that's all I have. I just wanted to give you a little more, be more transparent about our finances. We did meet the deadline closely by September 30th. I think our auditor faced some labor challenges, but nevertheless, we got it done. And so it's my goal to get that done even sooner in future years. So I'm happy to take any questions, and if you want to talk more offline, happy to do it. So.
Very good. Any questions or comments?
No questions, but comment that super helpful information, and thank you for all the work on this. Thanks.
No comments, but yes, I will reiterate, thank you for all the work on this.
And we appreciate, as you indicated, that you would be open for follow-up questions. Obviously, a good deal of material has come our way, so certainly we appreciate that you have made yourself available for any follow-up questions that we may have. And that should cover, that was also covering the single audit, obviously, as well. Executive sessions, we have none listed for tonight. That brings us to recess and adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you.